Hello students, this is me, Saurabh, English faculty of Mount Litera G School. And today I have brought a new chapter that is Indigo, which is of class 12th from Flamingo, which has been written by Louis Fisher. So let's begin with the chapter. Okay, this is all about the author Louis Fisher, 29th Feb 1896, 15th Jan 1970, was a Jewish American journalist. Among his works were a contribution to the ex-communist treatise, The God That Failed, A Life of Mahatma Gandhi, basis for the Academy Award-winning film Gandhi, as well as A Life of Lenin, which won the 1965 National Book Award in History and Biography. Some of the works by the writer are Gandhi and Stalin of 1947, The God That Failed, Contribution 1949, The Life of Mahatma Gandhi 1950, Stalin 1952, and The Essential Gandhi, Editor 1962. So this was the great achievements of the author which he wrote and were published in the given years. So now let's begin with the introduction of the chapter of Indigo, where we are going to study about Mahatma Gandhi once again. In this story, Louis describes Gandhi's struggle for the poor peasants of Champaran who were the sharecroppers with the British planters. They led a miserable life and were forced to grow indigo according to an agreement. They suffered a great injustice due to the landlord system in Bihar. Gandhi waged a war for about a year against their atrocities and brought justice to the poor peasants. So let's begin with the summary now. Louis Fisher first met Gandhi in 1942 at his ashram in Sevagram. He told him how and why he decided to disobey the British in 1917. Gandhi had gone to the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress in Lucknow, where he met a poor peasant named Rajkumar Shukla. He pleaded Gandhi to visit Champaran. Under an old agreement, the peasants of the Champaran district were sharecroppers. Rajkumar Shukla was one of them who was determined enough to accompany Gandhi everywhere till he fixed a date to visit his district. Impressed by the resolution of the peasant, Gandhi agreed to meet him in Calcutta and go with him to Champaran from there. After a few months, when Gandhi went to Calcutta, Shukla met him there and took him to Patna with him. There Shukla took him to meet with a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad, who later became the president of the Congress Party and of India. Rajendra Prasad was not there to welcome him, but the servants recognized Shukla as a sharecropper who needed help and let him inside the house with Gandhi, who was also considered another peasant. However, Gandhi was not allowed to draw water from the well as they thought that he was also an untouchable. Gandhi decided to go to Muzaffarpur to gather more information about the condition of the peasants in Champaran. He sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kriplani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur. When Gandhi reached the station, Kriplani was waiting with a large number of students. Gandhi stayed with Professor Malkani for 2 days and appreciated him for being courageous enough to harbor a person like him who was fighting for the country's freedom in spite of being a government official. The news of Gandhi's advent and his mission spread rapidly through Muzaffarpur and Champaran. Gandhi came to know that the lawyers were charging a fee from the peasants. Gandhi advised them against taking their cases to the law court, as he felt that all what was needed was to make them feel liberated from fear. Most of the arable lands in the Champaran district were divided into estates owned by Englishmen. who employed Indian tenants to work for them. The peasants were forced to be a part of a long term contract to plant 15% of their land with indigo. When the landlords got to know that Germany had developed synthetic indigo, they compelled the sharecroppers to pay them compensation for being released from the 15% agreement. When the sharecroppers protested against this injustice and hired lawyers to fight for them, the landlords hired thugs. Meanwhile, the news of the synthetic indigo reached the illiterate peasants who had already signed and wanted their money back. Gandhi had arrived to Champaran at this point of time and he decided to get his facts right before proceeding to do anything. He visited the secretary of the British Landlords Association, who refused to give information to an outsider, to which Gandhi replied that he was no outsider. Next, he called the British official commissioner of the Tirhat division, who advised Gandhi to leave Tirhat immediately. Gandhi proceeded to Motihari now, with several lawyers, where he was greeted by a vast crowd and found out that a peasant had been maltreated. He decided to pay a visit. On his way, he was stopped by the police superintendent's messenger, who warned him to leave the town. So, like this, that means Gandhiji kept on working for these poor peasants, and the messenger served Gandhi an official notice to quit Champaran immediately. Gandhi signed a receipt for the notice and wrote on it that he would disobey the order. He was summoned to court the next day. That night, Gandhi telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come from Bihar with influential friends, sent instructions to the ashram, and forwarded a full report to the Viceroy. In the morning, Motihari was swarming with peasants. They had only heard that some Mahatma who wanted to help them was in trouble with the British authorities. So here Gandhiji was struggling hard for these poor peasants to save them from this spontaneous courage to support Gandhi and to stand up against the British marked the beginning of their freedom from their fear of the British. The officials were unable to handle the crowd without Gandhi's cooperation. Perplexed by this incident that served as a proof that the British would be challenged by the Indians, the prosecutor requested the judge to postpone the trial, but Gandhi protested against the delay and read a statement pleading guilty. He was in a conflicting state of being. On one hand, he did not want to set a bad example as a lawbreaker, and on the other hand, he had to follow his conscience, to stand up for his people. The magistrate asked Gandhi to furnish bail for 120 minutes during the recess, but Gandhi refused. Finally, the judge released him without bail. Rajendra Prasad, Brij Kishore Babu, Maulana Majhatul Haq, and other prominent lawyers had arrived from Bihar. Gandhi demanded that the lawyers should fight against the injustice if he went to jail. So, finally here Mahatma Gandhi decided each and everything, that how he have to work for these peasants and how he have to go against the law without breaking it. They thought that if a stranger like Gandhi was prepared to go to jail for the peasants, then it would be a shame if they did not contribute their bit. Finally, they assured Gandhi that they were ready to follow him to jail. The unity and courage of the people to stand up against the British made Gandhi exclaim, "The battle of Champaran is won." Several days later, Gandhi learned that the magistrate that the case against him was ordered to be dropped. For this first time, civil disobedience had triumphed in modern India. So here now we can see that how Gandhiji just had a that means won in that battle of Champaran. Now, Gandhi delved deep into the inquiry and collected relevant documents from the peasants, which led the landlords to protest violently. In June, Gandhi had four interviews with the lieutenant governor. The appointed commission consisted of landlords, government officials, and Gandhi as the only representative of the sharecroppers. Finally, the committee agreed to reimburse the peasants as a mountain of evidence was gathered against the planters who were growing indigo in their fields and were not giving that much of amount to the peasants. Everyone thought Gandhi would ask for the full refund, but to everyone's surprise, he only asked for 50% of the money that the landlords had illegally taken from the peasants. However, he finally settled for only 25%. Gandhi felt that the money was less important than the fact that the landlords had to submit to the peasants. They had to surrender their self esteem. Also, the peasants realized their rights and became more courageous to stand up against this British injustice, the people who came from outside and are ruling this country. So, within a few years, the British planters left their estates, as a result of which indigo sharecropping disappeared. Gandhi saw the cultural and social backwardness in Champaran and felt like doing something for its upliftment. He requested 12 teachers to teach the people at Champaran, two young disciples of Gandhi, Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parikh, and their wives volunteered for the work. Gandhi's youngest son Devdas and his wife also joined in. Kasturbai educated the village about ashram rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. So, Gandhi got a doctor to serve the community for 6 months. Castor oil, quinine, and sulfur ointment were available. Gandhi maintained communication with the ashram and sent regular instructions and asked for financial accounts. The Champaran movement had a deep impact on Gandhi's life as it made it evident that the British could not order Indians in their own country. It was not a political agenda to begin a movement by defying the British. The Champaran movement grew out of an attempt to release the pain of the poor peasants. So, here the movement was becoming successful slowly. Politics for Gandhi was intertwined with the day-to-day problems of the ordinary mass. Gandhi's attempt was to mold a self-reliant India. When Gandhi's lawyer friends thought that it was a good idea to have the English pacifist Charles Freer Andrews stay in Champaran and help, Gandhi refused. He said that having an Englishman by their side in the time when every Indian should be strong and self-reliant would just indicate the weakness of their minds. Rajendra Prasad proudly comments that Gandhi had successfully taught everyone a lesson in self-reliance. So here, this was the story of indigo, where we have came to know and we have read about this, that how the indigo cultivation was stopped and all the peasants of Champaran got freedom from those British rulers. So now, like this, Gandhiji got success in his campaign, and like this, slowly the things started changing in that place with the help of Gandhi ji. Okay, thank you so much. Now we will meet again in the next video with few more points related to this chapter. So till then, stay healthy, stay safe and stay at home. Thank you so much.